I'm Mason Shawver, and this is my level of the warehouse. First, the player needs to jump across an edge, and then crawl underneath a tube. As the player approaches the window, they can use the grapnel to stack boxes and then jump through the window. Once the player is through the window, they will notice there is a tape recording to the left. Then the player will need to enter into the main room of the warehouse through 2 doors. Once in the main room of the warehouse, the player will need to turn the power back on in order to activate the crane. First, the player will need to move boxes out of the way and then jump onto the staircase and then onto the platform. Once on top of the platform, the player will need to activate the fuse box to turn the power back on, and then use the crane control to activate the crane. Once the crate has lifted, the player can crawl underneath the crate and reach the door. Once outside, the player will notice they're barricaded in and will need to use the burning barrel to burn down the pallets. The player can then re-enter the warehouse. The player will notice there's a window in the back that is open. To reach it, the player will need to stack boxes and reach the top of the shelves. Once on top of the shelves, the player will need to place the planks in between each shelf and crawl across the planks. Once the player has reached the final plank, they will need to crawl underneath the window and exit the warehouse. Then the player will crawl underneath some debris and then use a rock to smash through the wall. Once again, the player will need to use the burning barrel to burn down the pallets blocking the way. Next, the player will notice there's a gate that can be activated through the booth. The player will then need to move boxes out of the way and proceed to the next area.
This is Jonah Stewart, and this is my desert area. The player's first objective will be to find a way into the warehouse. They will come to the front door and try and see if it is unlocked. When they interact with it, they will be notified that it won't budge and they will need to find another way out. Coming to the breakable wall to the left, the player will be prompted to run and ram their body into the breakable wall in order to knock it down, gaining entry inside. Once inside, they will be prompted to turn on their flashlight and also be prompted to press the C key to crouch underneath the debris and also click the shift key in order for better visuals. In coming to the crates, they will need to push and pull using their grapnel in order to progress. And once through, the player will come across a tripwire that they may accidentally trip, and they will be notified that they need to be more aware. Next, the player will be prompted that there is a generator in the glass room and that maybe they should check it out. When heading inside, the player will be notified that they will need to turn on the generator, and in order to do so, they will need to find 2 power cores to restore the energy. They will come to this other breakable wall and need to break through it the same way. When entering, they will need to look under the boxes in order to find the whereabouts of a possible power core. But I already know where it is, so let's skip to it, shall we? When they finally attain the power core, they will be notified that there are 2 power cores and they will need to look elsewhere for the other one. Moving on to the next portion, the player will be notified that it seems too quiet and they will need to use rocks to locate possible mines that are hidden throughout the sand. If they can safely navigate through the minefield, they will come across the next power core, and when they have located both, they will be prompted to head back to the generator room so that they can turn on the power and restore energy throughout the building. This will also open the exit door to the next area, and so they will then follow through and enter into a sandstorm that is going on, and they will need to jump from platform to platform of the broken building or follow the path in order to get across before their health depletes. And once they have done so, they will come across some health packs underneath a tree that they can acquire if they have taken too much damage. They will then choose a path left or right, and if they go right, they will come across a corpse, and they will the Massey system will portray a sort of personality disgust to the corpse. Now entering inside the medical facility, they will need to find a way out of the room as it seems to be a dead end. They will also notice that there is a DNA capsule under the table, and they will be prompted to locate all 3 DNA capsules as this is their primary mission that they have come to. If they find the secret door, it will open, and they will then be notified to follow the main path or go off and explore and check the sides for secret doors. Coming to the corpse, they will find a hint to a riddle, and if they go up to the wall, they can interact with it, and if they get the riddle right, the door will open, giving them 2 health packs and a collectible. There is one other secret door as well, but that is for another time. The player will now need to get through these malfunctioning doors that are opening and closing at a rapid pace. They will need to match its speed and proceed through as quickly as they can before the door closes on them and drops their HP to 0. When they finally get through, they will then follow the main path with the collectible and be prompted to move the boxes out of their way using the grapnel or even jumping over it, but as long as they get through. Once they get through, they will then reach the acid room, and they will see some money off to the right, but they can choose to either go for it or not. The acid is very deadly to the HP as it drops their health rapidly. They will need to go towards the light, and it will activate a secret door that will allow them to progress. Looking around, they will need to then acquire and locate the second DNA capsule that is somewhere in the laser grid room. Once they have found the laser grid room, they will then need to James Bond their way through the lasers in order to find the other DNA capsule. And if they will do this successfully, they will acquire the DNA capsule and will then need to find the third one. The lasers drop the HP at a rapid rate, so they will need to be careful. They could run through a portion of them, but they will still take damage, so they must be careful and take it very slow. Finally, they will find the second DNA capsule that is to their left, and they will need to use this box in order to move through this complex combination of lasers. It is close quarters, and they will need to solely rely on the box in order to get through the slots in between the lasers so they don't fry themselves. If they can successfully do so, they will achieve and acquire the second DNA capsule, and once they do so, they will reach a checkpoint, and they will need to get through and enter into that slit into the wall that is also shown with some blue lighting. Once they get through, they will climb up a staircase and will be prompted to check somewhere near the glass room of the third DNA capsule. Once they find the third DNA capsule, a door will open, leading them into the control room, and they will be asked to deploy the DNA capsules into the table, and a secret door will open. There also is a secret door that requires the player to jump up and touch a green button, and it also has some collectibles inside. But moving on, the player will then have cleared the area and will proceed to the following area by following the collectibles that are along the path.
This is Luigino Perez, and this is the abandoned ship level. The beginning of the level reinforces movement skills that the player has learned thus far by performing small tasks such as crouching and jumping, and their difficulty will slowly increase as the player progresses through the level. I've also created small hidden areas with breadcrumb collectibles to guide the player to their discovery. Here, the player is prompted to do a running jump to reach the other side and is then rewarded with a collectible. After a series of ledges, the player can then see a small section of the ship, and this is designed to pique their interest and keep them moving forward. Since Alpha, I've also changed the terrain to add a new area for collectibles as well as a new setup to reach the ship. This new setup introduces the grapnel and prompts the player to connect a simulated rope bridge to the shoreline in order to create a bridge to the ship. Once on the ship, I introduced simple object interactions for the player, such as opening hatches using the E key. Once in the cargo hold, the player is required to have a battery in the inventory to operate the forklift and reach the lever on the catwalk that opens the exit door. This next room locks the player in and simulates toxic gas. The player must reach the fan control before suffocating. From here, the player can reach the boiler room. This setup has the player place a missing valve back onto the piping in order to turn on the boiler. When the player reaches the engine room, they must follow the piping to open valves, and do so in sequence in order to turn on the steam engine. After completing the objective, the player must then exit the ship by using a small boat in the well deck, which transitions into the next level.
This is Massey, and this is the mansion on the cliff. At the start of my level, you're at the base of a cliff where you see a ladder, and you must climb up to get to the shack. When you get into the shack, you'll see a barrier blocking your way, so you have to crouch to get to this crowbar that's under the ladder. In the corner of the shack, there's your first pickup. It's a piece of a picture. It turns into an objective, and when you collect all of them, the objective is completed. You use the crowbar to move the barrier, and then use your grapnel to move these boxes out of the way. Once the boxes have been removed, you move forward, and these objects here can't be moved by the grapnel, so you must jump over them and collect that other collectible and see your first turnstile base. The scrapper says it looks like something goes here. You see this important item, and using the grapnel you can reconstruct the turnstile, which serves as a way to open the door in front of you. Following the breadcrumb ahead, the player will continue under the mansion into the basement. It's here that they'll find their first instance of the hourglass EMP. So they see these electric floors, and there's a junction box, but they need the EMP in order to interact with it and disable the electric floors ahead. The player makes their way across and can grab some health before they move on. This bookshelf here must be moved using the grapnel. Then the player will climb the ladder to the left to continue upwards. After moving some of these boxes out of the way, the player will make their way into the main portion of the mansion. In this foyer, they're told that they can use their flashlight, and they can run into this fountain here to get an extra pickup. Following the piece of picture, they see that there's an electric floor and a junction box under here. When they disable the electric floor, they make their way over to this elevator part. Making their way up the stairs, the player sees that they need to fix the elevator before they can move any further. And they see they don't have all the parts, so continuing up this staircase here, the player will see a room to their right containing 2 turnstile bases that must be reconstructed. So making their way to the back, the player uses the grabnel to reconstruct this turnstile that shifts the barrels on the floor so that they can reach the elevator part that they're missing. After climbing up and retrieving the elevator part, the player can choose to go after the extra collectibles if they'd like. There's also one across the chandelier here. After they have both elevator parts, the player can remove the barrier and go up to the top floor of the mansion. At the top floor is the library, where the player will put into practice everything that they've learned so far. As the player walks in, they see a turnstile base and 2 electric floors, but only one way to proceed, which is under this bookcase. Interacting with the junction box will disable the electric floor, allowing them to grab hold of this turnstile top and send it across the electric floor before they disable it and head back themselves. The player then needs to get the turnstile top over this bookcase, crawl under, and then they can reconstruct the turnstile in order to move this bookcase, revealing a junction box behind it. Interacting with this disables the electric floor, allowing them to move safely. They see an obvious light coming from behind this bookshelf, and they have to use their crowbar from earlier in order to remove it. Once in this room, the player will see the last piece of picture and this glowing statue, which when interacted with will move and reveal the final pickup, the item that the scrapper came for. The scrapper can now leave the mansion and head out the back. As the scrapper drops down here, they'll continue back towards the rear of the mansion, where they'll follow the brick walls leading up into the next area.
This is The Decaying Environment by Jared Bradley. And in this environment, the player must navigate debris and falling rubble in order to retrieve a valuable from the top floor of the building. Now, in order to get into the building, the player must climb to the top of the parking garage. Now, here, they can use the car to knock out a section of the concrete barrier, allowing them to pass onto the path, getting them into the building. Now, once entering the building, the player has to navigate a little more debris, following the eerie glow next to the left staircase. Here, the player must navigate a couple different obstacles in order to get up the crumbling staircase. First of which, they must stack some debris, and this allows them to reach the first landing. Here, they must throw 2 bricks, or at least hit the board with 2 bricks in order to knock it over, creating a nice path for the player to walk across to the second floor. The second floor is also blocked. They have to keep going upstairs, moving quickly to avoiding the falling debris. And here they must lift up more debris in order to pass by where the staircase is out. And here they must cross the floor in order to reach the other staircase. And crossing this floor, you must dodge the sliding debris as the floor shifts when you step on them. And then a little more platforming in a tight area to finally reach the top floor. Once reaching the top floor, the player must search and locate the valuable object before progressing. Now, once the player gets the object, a theft defense system kicks on and a laser grid pops up. The player must navigate the laser grid, being careful not to get hit too many times, as this laser grid does 50 damage. Now, once making it through, The player can take the elevator, since the shifting building blocks progress down the other stairs that you came up. But taking the elevator stops short as the elevator also breaks down. The player can then take the stairs, being careful to navigate some more fallen debris. To the bottom floor, where there is some standing water that carries an electric current the player must navigate by in order to progress to the next scene.
Hello everyone, my name is Tevin Brown, and this is my scraps level. It's called the puzzle room. First thing you notice, some crates and a door, but it's jammed, so you need to use one of the crates to get up to where the vent is and crawl through. After crawling through the vent, first thing you'll notice is a switch that you can use to turn on the lights and the defenses, like this power grid, where you have to jump or crouch to navigate through to the next room. After getting past the laser grid, you find yourself in the first puzzle room. You use the blocks to activate their respective pressure plates and to get around the defenses in the room. On to the next area. After you get past the defenses in the first room, you find your first puzzle lens. For one of 4, which you need to complete the level. The next area is a maze, in which you need to find 2 switches in order to open the door and proceed to the next area. There's also some gold hidden throughout the maze. In this area, you'll see some coal, charcoal, and a log. You need to pick one of the 2 objects and burn them on the furnace in order to open the door and get to the next area. The final puzzle, you need to step on the pressure plate that drops the blocks in order to use them to destroy the barrier surrounding the final lens. Only by acquiring the final lens, you open up the secret door leading to the vault. With all 4 lenses in your inventory, you can now open the vault door, collect all the gold, and then retrieve the gem to complete the level. And that's it for my level.